File, the academic library podcast from Choice. Choice is a publishing division of the ACRL and the publisher of Choice Reviews and CC Advisor. This episode is brought to you by Credo. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice, and for this 4-episode series, my guests and I will be discussing how orientation and engagement factor into the first-year experience. These discussions are part of a longer series on the first-year experience that Credo is presenting with Choice. Last month, we looked at some of the other components that make a successful first-year experience program, namely collaboration and information literacy. But right now, and for the next 4 episodes, I'll be joined by Ray Pun, a doctoral student in educational leadership at California State University, Fresno, Andrew Carlos, who is a STEM Web Services librarian at Cal State East Bay, and Danielle Rapu, Library Systems and Assessment Librarian at Pasadena City College. In this first episode, our guest and I start off with a discussion on students' first impressions of the library, the orientation programming and events my guests are creating, and how student backgrounds inform their services and needs. Okay, in this series, I'm really pleased to see that we've got librarians from colleges with diverse student populations as well as diverse college types. We've got you, Ray, with a background in larger institutions like Fresno State, and you, Andrew, you're currently working at a somewhat smaller master's granting public institution, Cal State East Bay. And Danielle, you're working at Pasadena City College, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is a community college, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. When a first-year student walks into your library, either during orientation or during those first few weeks of school, what's your sense of what they're thinking and feeling? And Danielle, why don't we start with you?
I get the sentiment that students really have a sense of anxiety. They're very overwhelmed. There's so much newness going on in their lives. It's a really transitional period in time. And I feel like at that phase, it's really helpful for us to be welcoming and inviting and not push so much information, because that anxiety is definitely present. You can see it on their faces, and you see the wide eyes, and you can tell that they have a sense that there's a lot changing in their lives at that point.
Right. And then Andrew, I imagine you see some of the somewhat same expressions, I guess, on the faces of the students coming in.
Yeah, I always think about like how students are reacting to our physical space, and what I've noticed in the first couple of weeks is that students feel really comfortable about the space itself. Mm-hmm. So they're very independent in where they're going. They like to meet their friends here, all that stuff. So they have a really high regard for our physical space, other than the usual discussions of not enough power for them to plug their phones in or their laptops.
Okay. And then Ray, how about you?
Yeah, I certainly agree with what Danielle and Andrew is saying. There's certainly an information overload. A lot of our students at Fresno State, they are first generation. So I think for them, it's like, who can they ask for help that's not in their immediate family? And obviously they're trying to figure out and make those connections. But I think the point is also like where they're coming from in the local high schools and then transitioning to a school like Fresno State, where the library itself is bigger than their high school. Like, how do they navigate the physical spaces, but also like thinking about specifically the expectations, right? Like how should they be as students, you know, and what does it mean to be a studious student or a Fresno State student or etc. And I think a lot of that comes down to questioning like their own habits and identities and figuring out the best approaches to support their own academic journey.
How do you see that manifesting itself, Ray, in terms of, you know, the sort of expectations, I guess, that you just mentioned about the students? How are they expressing that?
That's a great question, because I think working with a lot of the colleagues from student affairs, where we do a lot of orientations and really giving prescribed positive attributes, like what we expect students to be successful and how do they become successful, is definitely an approach that works well. But it's also very like a little bit stifling, because the students will feel like, oh, I'm so used to like checking my phone during class because I was doing that in high school, and then now I feel like maybe I shouldn't do that in college. And then they start really questioning that. So I think for them, it's a matter of being thoughtful about their own upbringing, but understanding that the expectations of them to be successful requires a change of behavior, a change of habit. And not to say that they completely change their own identities, or personalities, but rather just being used to that the next 4 years will be dramatically different from what they were experiencing in high school. And I think we want to make that huge distinction that college, or at least in the first year experience, is not an extension of high school. It's not like the 5th year of high school. It's quite different, and you're really on your own. That's what we emphasize. There's a lot of autonomy, but you're on your own. But there's people here to help them.
Right. So Danielle, I just wanted to cut right back to you, based on what Ray just said. I imagine you would agree that you want to make that distinction with college being very different than the high school experience. But at the same time, as you said, you've got a cohort of students who are very anxious about, what they're able to do or figuring out how to use a library. How are you walking that line?
I think because we have such a diverse population, and I don't always mean that in the traditional demographic sense, we have a sizable population of older adults who come back to college or are attending college for the first time after having not been in any form of higher ed for a really long time. And we find that oftentimes they have the similar issues or anxieties that first year students have, where they, like Ray said, are making this assimilation into higher education from perhaps previous environments that they're used to, their high school libraries. So for instance, I've had students ask, do I have to sign up somewhere to use a computer when we have open computer labs and all they need to do is show up and log on to the computer? We also have questions such as, do I have to ask permission to use this particular resource when it's, just pull it off the shelf and use it? So I feel like there's a lot of I would say cautious approach that students are taking to not kind of knowing exactly what they are able to do and what they can't. So I feel like maybe there is some difference that Andrew mentioned, that the students seem very comfortable with the physical space. The building that I work in, the library is much larger than many community college libraries, and it looks very intimidating, the building itself. And so I think some students even feel intimidated just coming in and seeing what we have to offer, and then once they're there, trying to navigate what are the expectations or what resources do they have available to them and how do they utilize them is something that they are doing when they first arrive.
Are your first year students great researchers? Let's be honest, the answer is probably no. Websites like Google and Wikipedia have spoiled users with convenience while flooding the information landscape with sources ranging from shoddy to outright duplicitous. Credo Online Reference Service can help. Its user-friendly interface gives students the convenience they expect, paired with the authoritative content librarians demand. Features like topic pages, the mind map, and real-time reference make it ideal for demoing the research process during instruction. Visit corp.credoreference.com for more details and to download the interactive Credo FYE guide, Practices for Enhancing Instruction, which features prominent librarians offering step-by-step activity plans and best practices. So I imagine sort of one of the ways of helping students deal with or overcome that anxiety is actually getting them involved and actually working on projects that would specifically pull in actual usage of some of the resources that the library provides. And so, Danielle, I'm wondering if at Pasadena, if you could talk about the optional first course that first year students can sign up for and tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So our college has what's called College One, and it is an optional class that freshman year students can take. And that course is a credit bearing course that does transfer to the UC system and the CSU system. And that College One course is designed to help support them and build their academic skills, their career skills, and really involve them in group collaboration, critical thinking, accessing information, and really being able to transition into the higher education sphere.
Okay. And then Ray and Andrew, are some of those elements that Danielle just described, are they similar or different from the goals for first-year students at Fresno and East Bay?
So this is Ray from Fresno, and I wanted to say that back at that university, we have a University One class, which is very similar to the course that Danielle was describing, focuses on time management, project management, group work, critical thinking, and how to write and research and create a argumentative paper for first-year students, but it's not a required class. So there's that huge distinction, and it can be an elective or a requirement for some kind of a credential for graduation. But one of the things I work closely is being embedded in some of the special first-year programs, including our first-year STEM program. It's a special grant-funded program that looks at recruiting and retaining women and underrepresented students in the STEM field, so helping them become STEM majors by taking this class. And one of the things we do is figure out the information need assessment in sustainability research that they all conduct using different variety of research tools and library resources that I share. But at the end, we do a poster together, and the posters are designed to show everyone that what they've mastered and what are some of the resources that they compiled, what are their findings in the campus sustainability project. But then it ties nicely because it's actually held in the library. So there's some of that element that works really well in terms of supporting undergraduate research. And that class in itself, I think, has utilized a lot of the resources and services that I provided when I was the librarian there. So I feel like that had an effective impact in supporting first-year students for the STEM majors.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay. And Andrew, how about you? What are some of the specifics around your program?
Yeah, so at East Bay, we are actually transitioning to semester system, but previously when we were under the quarter system, the library was really lucky in that we are one of the few CSUs that had a credit-bearing library-related course. So it was a required course for all first-year students to take, and it was held in conjunction with a course called General Studies 1, which is similar to what Danielle and Ray are talking about. It's a way to get students ready for college with like time management skills, just getting them familiar with the things that are required of them to be successful college students. But with the course that we had for the library, we actually spent time going over developing the research skills and introducing them to different services and stuff that we had in the library, basically, like databases, tutoring, things like that.
Right. Okay. I'm also curious about how important you think the type of school is in determining students' needs. I think all three of you have kind of touched on this sort of a little bit, but how big of a role does the individual background of the student play into the student's initial experience with the library and the background they bring to it? And Ray, why don't we start with you on this one?
Sure, I certainly agree that it plays a huge role. We have students who are commuting, who are transfers, who are first generation, who are coming from immigrant families, who are completely new or completely already used to the library research or just the academic experience because of maybe their background using the high school libraries or the public libraries and conducting research and so forth. So I think that angle is interesting because that sort of gives them that feeling whether or not, and how they should approach the library. If they already recognize, obviously, the key points in the reference services or the circulation, then they'll know what to do. But if they're completely new to it, like someone who's never been to a library, and many of our students in the first year, they have not been to a library, because whether they have a high school library or they've never been to a public library, that's a separate matter. But the fact that based on an assessment we had done, just figuring out students and their experiences using libraries, a lot of them haven't, and it's harder for them to figure out, if they should ask this question. Is it going to be quote unquote stupid? And it's challenging, because we don't, we're not here to necessarily make them feel this way, but I think there's that assumption, like they become really vulnerable, and then I think for us, we need to really dismantle these kinds of barriers and fears and cultures, and help them realize that we're supportive, and I think that requires a collective action and teamwork, a lot of teamwork.
Right. Andrew, would you agree?
Yeah, so I found that actually students who have previous experience with library resources, so if they've worked with a librarian in the past, in their high school, or even just went to the public library, a lot of times our students don't really know what they need. So in our class that I used to teach, I've actually had students who kind of checked out. I would be introducing new resources to them, and they would be like, "Oh, well, I already have experience with library resources. I don't need to pay attention." But it's like, you have experience with library resources that are completely different from what we're providing you, and you also don't really know about the different types of services that we're providing. So it's really important for you to just kind of be open to learning more about the library. The libraries aren't one-dimensional. You just need to know about the different services and just the different ways that a library can be there to support you in your education.
Right. And then Danielle, in the time we have left, I'm very curious to see or hear what your thoughts on this, especially with the makeup of the student body at Pasadena.
Yeah, our student body is very diverse. As an introductory icebreaker, I oftentimes will ask classes when they come in for orientation sessions about their educational goals, and I'll ask people, who is interested in transferring to a CSU or a UC or to another university. Sometimes I get a lot of hands, and sometimes I don't, because there are other educational goals that we are looking to serve, which would include our populations that are getting certificates. So unlike the CSUs, we offer a certificate that is not a college degree. It's just a extension of professional development for people to have. So for instance, they can go into automotive, or they can go into welding, machine shop kind of certificates that aren't actual college degrees, but they do heighten their ability to be marketable in the job market. And they still, even though they're not, going for that same educational goal of a college degree, they still need those information literacy tools. As learners and lifelong learners, they are going to encounter things in the workplace that will require those skills. So they are just as important of a target for us to engage with. And aside from that, we also have students who are here, and I'm sure it's similar for the CSUs, even at that phase, that sometimes you have students who are undeclared, or they're not sure where they're going. They're still feeling things out and kind of trying to discover where do they see themselves. And so I think it's very important to see each set of students that are before you as individuals, and even though we are seeing them in the same settings, that we can't categorize them as all the same, that it's important to let them know and demonstrate your interest in what their educational goals are, so that they can see that not only do you have the resources to support them, but that you are genuinely invested in their success.
That was Ray Pun, Andrew Carlos, and Danielle Rapu. This concludes the first of our 4-part series on how orientation and engagement factor into the first-year experience. This episode was brought to you by Credo. Be sure to join us for the next episode, where we'll discuss how to drive even more engagement post-orientation and some of the most important components of first-year student programming and event planning.
us, we do have a welcome day or student success day, and that is before the beginning of the semester. The campus reaches out and invites all new students and their families to come to campus for kind of an open house. And so they have a resource fair, and they open up a lot of the spaces like the library or the student union, and allow tours and information to be given out before the start of the semester.
Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship dropdown. On choice360.org, you'll also find information on Choice's entire product platform, including Choice Reviews, CC Advisor, Choice Webinars, resources for college libraries, our white papers, and a whole lot more. A great way to keep up with The Authority File is to join the Choice Authority File Facebook group, which you can access via the Choice Reviews Facebook page. As a member of the group, you can give us feedback, suggest podcast participants, chat with other listeners, and submit new topic ideas. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.